What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue here with my 2024 college football schedule preview and projected record series. The UCLA Bruins are up next, and before we preview their schedule for 2024 and give them an early projected record based on how tough their schedule is, let's take a look back at what UCLA did in 2023. Here were my projections and predictions last year for UCLA. My projection had them at 9-3, and then my prediction for them was 8-4, so I did have a little bit of a difference there with my projection and prediction for this team. UCLA, though, was just under that, though, compared to my projection and predictions. They went 7-5 in the regular season in 2023, and then 8-5 overall if you count their bowl game victory at the end of the year. In Chip Kelly's final year here at UCLA, Deshaun Foster is now going to be taking over as the head coach for UCLA, and this was also their final year in the Pac-12, of course. This was the schedule last year in 2023, and you look at their non-conference schedule. They played Coastal Carolina and San Diego State here on the road, so a couple of, group of 5 teams that are pretty good there in the non-conference, and then they played NC Central in the non-conference here as well. They ended up winning all those non-conference games and started out 3-0, and then you look at the losses coming here in the Pac-12. They lost to Utah here on the road, Oregon State here on the road as well, and then Arizona here on the road, and then, of course, Arizona State and Cal, both here at home. So that was a schedule from last year in 2023. So again, a new rebuild for UCLA. Not a rebuild, but pretty much a new era here for UCLA with a new head coach, and of course going to the Big Ten next year in 2024. Let's now look ahead to 2024, and here is the schedule for the upcoming season for UCLA. And before we go game by game, let's take a look at who they will play in the non-conference. So this is their non-conference schedule. They will play Hawaii here on the road, I should say, not here at home. They will play Hawaii here on the road in the non-conference in week number 1. And then they play LSU here on the road in the non-conference. And then you got Fresno State here at home. So a pretty tough non-conference schedule for UCLA. You got a couple of non-conference games here on the road, and then you got one game here in the non-conference at home. But it's a pretty good Fresno State team that's coming off a pretty good season last year. And then you got LSU here on the road in Death Valley. That's going to be a very tough road game here in the non-conference here for UCLA. We kind of expect LSU to be the better team, but LSU kind of take a step back from where they were a year ago. But overall, LSU is still going to be a very tough road game here in the non-conference. So that's the non-conference schedule for UCLA in 2024. Let's go back to the schedule now here for the upcoming season and go game by game now. So they will start things off with Hawaii here on August 31st. And then after that, they get a bye week here rather early here. Their bye week comes here, of course, in the month of September, in the first weekend of the month of September. That's a pretty weird spot for a bye week. And then they do play Indiana to open up Big Ten play here on September the 14th. And then after that, they go on the road to play LSU here on September the 21st in the non-conference. And then they come back here at home to play Oregon here on September the 28th. Then they get to the month of October. They'll play on the road here at Penn State here on October the 5th. Then they come back here at home to play Minnesota here on October the 12th. Then they go on the road to play Rutgers here on October the 19th. And then they get a bye week here in the last weekend of the month of October. They get to the month of November. They'll play Nebraska here on the road. So they got back-to-back road games here with Rutgers and Nebraska. But the good news is that they get a bye week in between those two road games. And then they come back here at home to play Iowa here on November the 9th. Then it's Washington here on the road on November 16th. Then they'll play rival USC here on November 23rd. And then surprisingly, they're going to close things out with a non-conference game here against Fresno State on November 30th. I kind of find it interesting that they're not playing USC here at the end of the season instead of Fresno State. Like I said, that's a very weird, game to close things out if you're a UCLA fan. But other than that, that's the schedule for UCLA in 2024. And to be honest, this is a very tough schedule for UCLA, especially with a first-year head coach for Deshaun Foster and, heading to the Big Ten next season. And you look at that stretch from September 21st to October the 5th, LSU, Oregon, and Penn State, those are definitely teams that are definitely like playoff contenders heading into 2024. So a very tough schedule for UCLA in 2024. Let's now get a projection here for the Bruins for 2024. This is not going to be my official prediction. This is simply going to be my projection based on how tough the schedule is for UCLA, and this is the scale I use here for my projections. If it's a 1% game in the red, that percentage is counted as an automatic loss here when we do these projections, and then 20% games in the orange are going to be games where UCLA will be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs. 40% games in the yellow are going to be games where UCLA will be a heavy underdog in by about a touchdown, and then 50-50 games will of course stay in the white. Games I think can go either way, and then 60% games here in the purple are going to be games where they'll be favored by at least a touchdown, and then 80% games here in the blue, they're going to be favored by a couple touchdowns and also by double digits. And then the 99% games here in the green, these are pretty much counted as the automatic wins here for UCLA. And like I said, those are counted as automatic wins. So we'll start with the easy wins here for UCLA for 2024. And realistically, when I look at this schedule, I don't have any games. I don't have a lot of games here in the green. I just have one game here in the green, and that game is on the road here at Hawaii. I don't really expect UCLA to be favored by over 95% though in that game. I think that's a game that definitely is at 90% at least, but the reason why it could be at 90% is just because it's on the road. I was very close to putting this game in the blue perhaps, but I'm going to stick with it and put it in the green for right now just because UCLA is a much more better team than Hawaii is. So they will be, I think, at least by more than 3 touchdowns of favorites here. And again, we count these green games as automatic wins. They're not guaranteed wins, but we count them as automatic wins here when we do these projections. And then you look at the rest of the schedule. I do have one game on here where UCLA will be a favorite by a couple touchdowns and also by double digits, and that's the game here against Fresno State. So I think UCLA will be favored by a couple touchdowns here against Fresno State. Fresno State's not a bad group of 5 teams, so that's the reason why this is a game that's in the blue. I know the Bruins are playing here at home, but with a first-year head coach and everything, that's definitely a game that you don't want to sleep on if you're UCLA. And to be honest, we've seen some first-year head coaches struggle against non-conference opponents. So I think that's a game that could probably be in the blue there, and I think they'll still be favored by double digits even playing at home. But again, that's a game that I think UCLA will be favored by a couple touchdowns, but it won't be easy here for UCLA against Fresno State. And then you look at the rest of the schedule, there's not really any other games I could favor UCLA in this one, so let's go to the games now where they're going to be underdogs in. I don't have any red games on here for UCLA, but I do have one game here in the orange. The games where UCLA will be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs, and that game is going to be on the road here at Penn State. So this is the only game I see UCLA being about a couple touchdowns of underdogs. The reason why this game is in the orange is just because they're playing here on the road at Penn State. This is a very tough place to play, one of the toughest places to play in the Big Ten Conference. And again, that's a very tough road game, so I'm going to put UCLA as a couple touchdowns of underdogs here on the road at Penn State here in the month of October. And then we go to the games now where UCLA will be a heavy underdog in by about a touchdown. I got 4 games on here in the yellow. Got LSU here on the road, Oregon at home, and then I got Iowa and Washington here on the road as well. LSU, that's a non-conference game here on the road. I know that's a game that probably should be in the orange, but I'm going to stick with it and put it in the yellow for right now. And again, I think LSU is not going to be the same team as they were from last year on the offensive side of football with a new quarterback, but still, playing on the road, I'm going to favor LSU in that game. And then Oregon, obviously, going to have a really good team this year. I mean, UCLA is playing at home in this game. It definitely could be an upset alert type game, to be honest, especially playing here in the early part of September. But I'm going to stick with it here and put it in the yellow. And then, of course, Iowa here at home. I was very close to putting that game as a 50-50 game, but I'm going to stick with it and put it in the yellow for right now. And then, of course, Washington. When I look back at this game now, I feel like it should be a 50-50 game now because both of these teams are pretty even in roster turnover-wise and also first-year head coaches and everything. But I'm going to stick with it and put it in the yellow because where Washington was last year, that was definitely a very good team last season. So I think UCLA will be a heavy underdog in all 4 of these games here in the yellow. These are definitely very winnable games. They're not really like losable games as of right now. They're definitely very winnable, and they're also very big upset alert type games as well. I don't really expect UCLA to beat Oregon and also LSU perhaps, but maybe their best chances are against Iowa and Washington here on the road, so I think they'll have a chance in those 2 games, but Oregon and LSU are going to be very tough opponents. And then the rest of the games here for UCLA, Indiana, Minnesota, Rutgers, Nebraska, and USC. These are all 50-50 games here for me for UCLA. I think they can go either way. Indiana's got a lot of question marks, but they're going to have a first-year head coach. So is UCLA. I think that's a pretty even matchup. Minnesota playing them at home, I think it's a pretty even matchup. And then you got Rutgers and Nebraska. I know both of those games are on the road, but I think those are pretty even matchups as well. Then USC, that's a rival game. You never know what can happen. So I think UCLA, these are all their 50-50 games here for 2024. So what does the projected record come out to be here for UCLA based on how tough this schedule is? Again, this is not my official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. So we count that one green game as an automatic win here, and then you count that one blue game as a slight win, and then you average out that one game in the orange at 20%. Then you average out all these yellow games here at 40%, and then you average out all the 50-50 games here at 50%. And the overall projected record that you get here for UCLA comes out to be 5-7 for 2024. So I think that's a pretty fair projection here for UCLA for a first-year head coach in Deshaun Foster. Again, a 5-7 projection based on how tough this schedule is. It wouldn't really shock me if this team did go 6-6 and made it to a bowl game in their first year under Deshaun Foster. But again, this is a very tough schedule for their first year in the Big Ten and also for their first-year head coach in Deshaun Foster. If they go 4-8, that wouldn't definitely be a very big disappointment, especially for a team that's coming off a 7-5 season. But again, a first-year head coach, that's the reason why the projection came out to be 5-7. If Chip Kelly was still here, I would probably predict them to go to a bowl game and also project them to go to a bowl game. But again, as of right now, the projection comes out to be 5-7 here for 2024. So give me your thoughts on this UCLA team down in the comments below. What do you think their projected record is for 2024? Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.